As ever, I'm delighted by your comments, and some of them are very interesting. There's one that's caught my eye, and a sort of challenge from a person called Tony Dick, who says, we're talking about universities, and I'm suggesting that really universities at the moment are a little overrated, at least in the UK. And they're beginning to become chaotic money-making machines whose care for the student is very much at the bottom of the heap. And I'm going to read primarily for domestic students. OMG! The professor is a xenophobe after all. See how easily it is misunderstood when desired. I feel a new video coming on based on the Latin universitatem, meaning aggregate or whole. They should be for everyone all over the world. Universitas Magistorum et Scholarium means community of masters and scholars. Now who is to blame? Is it Doris this time or Braverman again? It could be Putin, of course. He seems to be at the bottom of everything bad. Well, indeed, he does. But Tony Dick, you need to look at the definition that you put there. This comes from about 1300. And the idea of the university, from which, of course, we get the word universe from the same source, the whole, the aggregate. It's a late Latin word, which comes from universus, the whole. But in the academic sense, you're quite right. It goes back to Universitas Magistorum, the community of masters and scholars. And before that, the universities that existed, places like Oxford and Cambridge, the Scottish universities, some of the universities in Central Europe, used the word studium. And the Spanish used the word universitat, German universitat, Russian universitet, and so on. But it's not universal insofar as it offers a universal education to everybody who comes to it. It's universal insofar as the universal, that the whole is made up of the students and the masters. So there's a certain parity between those who are learning and those who are teaching. And you learn from the crumbs that fall from the master's table. And if we go to John Henry Newman's idea of a university, and I drew on Newman's idea when I was asked to give a speech to the what are they, the rectors or something, the assembly of professors and senior staff in my university, when I was given a gown and made a professor and all this sort of stuff. And I drew on Newman's ideas, which he put forward in the end of the 19th century. And I think I think they're very interesting. He said the idea of a university defined and illustrated is about knowledge pursued for its own sake. And so the idea of a university degree is not about the degree itself. That's a proof that you've gone through that process. It's the hunger for knowledge. And I think in a modern idea, the idea of a university, I mean, Newman was not the first person to talk about the idea of a university. The first person to talk about that was a man in Prussia. But I think a university is defined, and this is what I said way back when I gave that speech. A university is defined by its library. Or a university is the image of the university is in its library, because that is the center of knowledge. That is an icon of knowledge. But I think today we need to go a little bit further. We need to say that a university, an ideal university, would be an institution which links technology with instruction and with research. Those three things to go together. And a research university, which is something which belongs very much to the 19th century. So that would be something that John Henry Newman would have known of, particularly because he came from Oxford, because he set up his own university in Dublin and so on. This was very much something that was added to the idea of teaching at an undergraduate level. The purpose of a studium was to preserve and give knowledge to students, whereas the goal of a university in the 19th century was to discover new knowledge. So to put those two together, that is to embrace a modern idea of a university, something that is creative, something that generates new ideas, and something that fosters and binds everybody, student and masters, in the quest for what is beyond, for what is out there. And it doesn't matter what the subject is. It can be an art, a procedure, an inquiry, a mathematical puzzle. The tools that we are using are the thirst for knowledge and the desire to simplify, the desire to identify and to sum things up. Those are the tools that we're looking for. In an ideal university, I think undergraduates would have would perhaps have a broader spectrum of interest, not just focusing on one subject, but maybe two. In the same way, I think the A-level system that we've got at the moment is perhaps a little limited. But we shouldn't be abandoning focus for generality, and we shouldn't give in to a sort of to some of the baser aspects of the universities around the world that are too general. And university shouldn't just be a rite of passage. University should be an introduction to knowledge. I think there's another feature to the university which is important, and that is it shouldn't be like Ryanair. It shouldn't be one of those things which has got lots of hidden costs. The costs should be upfront, and they should be clear, and they should be minimal. And actually, this is where I disagree quite firmly with Jeremy Corbyn. I remember having a conversation with his brother about this, and I said I was to the left of Jeremy in this, although I considered myself to be significantly bluer than Piers Corbyn in the first place. And Piers Corbyn thought this was quite funny. I don't think the joke has really worn off, but Jeremy Corbyn at the time was saying that there were selective degrees that should be free and financed by the government, whereas there were other degrees, what Rishi Sunak, I suspect, calls Mickey Mouse degrees, which either shouldn't be financed by the government or shouldn't exist at all. Now, I believe that the university is like a great room that you enter through a specific door. Now, that door may be the door I entered, which is theology, which has given me a lot of skills, and I very rarely use them for the purpose of studying or promulgating theology. And that's the issue. Some people may go into that great room through classics, like Boris Johnson. He became our Prime Minister, after all, and he has elevated lying to become a great art form. So he will go down in history as one of the great deceivers. There's probably a supreme circle of hell. If he's not going to enter the canon of Virgil, the Iliad or the Odyssey. He might be entering Dante. But you might also go into university through mathematics. One of the great aspirations to study maths, for example, in King's at Cambridge. To do your step papers, those extraordinary post-A-level exams which are almost impossible, or now they're done before A-level. God knows how anybody even gets through the first or second question. But even seasoned undergraduates and postgraduates find the step papers difficult. They're not intended to be easy. They're intended to challenge and to give one an opportunity to wrestle with knowledge. And the knowledge doesn't come more abstract, more pure than it does in mathematics, or maybe it's economics, or maybe it's needlework, or juggling, or theatre. And you come into that room and you learn those skills of acquiring knowledge, of acquiring your discipline, and of analysing what is necessary, and then practising it. And you leave the university with those skills. You don't really leave the university with a compendium of collected knowledge on Plato or Socrates or John of Damascus. You leave the university with an ability to read a text, in my case, quickly, and draw key points from that, and analyse and look carefully at what somebody has said and wonder whether or not they're telling the truth, or wonder who said it before. These are the key skills that I learnt in my university, and I've continued to apply them, which means, there are so many times when I felt, oh, I wish I'd studied, I wish I'd read law, or I wish I'd read classics, or I wish I'd been more skilled at mathematics. But there are also times when I wish deeply that I understood one end of a sewing machine from another, that I understood how to do proper clowning, how to get the right notes from my throat, how to sing properly, how to tap dance, and all of those skills I could have learnt, and I wish I had learnt. And sometimes you just think, well, there's not enough years in a lifetime to learn all those skills. I can admire them in others, but when it comes down to it, I recognize those key features: the dedication, the knowledge, and the practice. So the idea that a university should be universal, open to all, this is a misreading of the term. A university should be open to all, but that's not in its name. That's a misreading of that term. The name is about the companionship of those who are learning and those who are teaching and researching. But do I think a university should be open to all? Yes, I do. Do I think it should be open to all those who have more money? No, and that's the point. I really don't think a university in the UK should be promoting its wares simply to people who are going to pay higher fees, that is, to foreigners. Do I think foreigners should come to our British universities and benefit from them? Yes, I do. I don't think that makes me a hypocrite to say that. I think it makes me a realist. But should they be charged bigger fees than domestic students? No, but as they are, I think it is deeply wrong that places are reserved for those people who are going to pay more, and places are not available for people who are here. We need to be energizing our young community. Now, I also said today that I really think the university is oversubscribed as a concept. I think there are many better things to do with your life than run away to a university. I did it late. There's no reason why you should delay, but there's equally no reason why you should run to a university simply because other people are doing so. And I'm not suggesting you take a year out. I think that's a waste of time. Sorry. Even by the time I got to the university, I realized that I was perhaps a little old for it, and I probably would have been better doing research than doing an undergraduate degree. There were moments when I was bored. And I remember discussing with an old school friend who also went to Oxford with me. I was discussing this a few days ago, that neither of us thought we were very well taught in Oxford. We weren't taught at all. We got on with it. We were given these incredibly long reading lists, and we read what we could in the Bodleian, and we produced essays, and we had very little advice. Now today, maybe the teaching is better. Certainly I didn't know how to write an essay until until I'd left university, and I was faced with teaching somebody how to write an essay myself, and I thought, oh, I don't know how to do that. Well, now I do. I recommend that you have a look at my video on how to write a good essay, because even though it's targeted perhaps at sixth formers, it works for undergraduate level as well. I have used the same technique on 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and 8-year-olds who I teach regularly. I find teaching younger children a very satisfying pastime, and I very much enjoy teaching, for example, poetry and the analysis of poetry to young children. They all get very excited about the rhythm. Ooh, is this an iambic pentameter, or is this a trochee or a spondee, or no, it's a dactyl. Yes, indeed it is. And we leave that information often in English classes until people are about 18, and it's taught appallingly. So if you want to learn about the mechanics of poetry, come to me. I'm going to start doing some poetry. I'm going to start putting out the poems of Shakespeare, the sonnets of Shakespeare, with analysis, and I'll start doing this, I hope, within the next month. And then I'll go on from there, and I'll do other poets as well. And I will try and give you as clear an analysis and a breakdown of that as I possibly can, because I think that information should be out there. But let's just to go back to the etymology of the word university. Tony Dick is wrong. Universitatem. It certainly does mean whole. It certainly does mean universal, but it's not about universal entrance. Universities have always been very selective, and I think probably they should continue to be selective. And if anything, we should have rather fewer of them, and we should encourage people to go and do interesting jobs, to go and do apprentices, to go and learn, particularly if it's a practical skill. If you want to, we need more taxi drivers. If you want to learn how to drive a taxi in London, you better do the knowledge, rather than consulting your iPhone as you're trying to negotiate the roads in your Uber. Come on, put some work in and follow your heart. You don't need to follow the crowd.